Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Munir Al-Azouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we will not help you to understand a certain clause of the MDR or a certain chapter of it. We'll try to help you understand how to be successful at an EU MDR certification. And for that, I have with me Shokoufeh, who is helping us to understand how she, if I can say, made it to be successful to an EU MDR certificate, because she is working for Straumann and she was granted, or she received her certificate. I don't know if she received it now, but I will ask her.
Yes.
But she got the news that yes, she is certified, and I wanted her to help us understand how she has made that and how difficult it was. So Shokoufeh, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Hi, Munir. Great to be here and have this call with you.
Thank you for that. So you are calling, or you are in Switzerland, so we are really close one to the other, I think, and even nearly to the same city, because Basel, you are also, Straumann is located in Basel, so I think you are also in the office in Basel.
Correct, that's correct.
Great. So, Shokoufeh, can you first make an introduction of yourself and maybe of Straumann also, just for people that don't know this company, and then we can go to this all the question related to your journey and see how you have done it. So, give us your secret sauce or secrets that will help maybe other companies.
Sure. I am Shokoufeh. I am the MDR implementation lead at the Institute Straumann. For those of you who are not familiar with the company, we are in the dental branch. So we most of the products that we had to handle also for the MDR remediation is anything that goes in the mouth for the restoration of the teeth, from the implants itself that are replacing the roots of the teeth, to the restorations that goes on the top as crowns, and also products that are used in the planning of the procedure and actually the surgical procedure. So our products expand across the classes of class 1 to class 3 products, and implantable, custom-made. We also have Straumann products and third-party products. So in terms of economic operators' responsibilities, we had to cover all these different requirements. And my background, I am coming from the RNC, a regulatory affairs and compliance background, and mainly in medical devices. That's my expertise.
So it's great. Yeah, I think we have the same kind of background, and it's really interesting also to see that, because I started also with a medical device dental company, which was called Micromega in France, and I know a bit of those products. Shokoufeh, as we said, so I saw this announcement that was made in LinkedIn saying, "Oh, we get a EU MDR certificate." So let's now come back to this journey, so to help people really understand how difficult it is, or maybe how easy it is. I don't know. You will tell me. So in terms of the project itself, so do you have an estimation of how long did it took from maybe the kickoff when you said we have to be EU MDR certified until you received their certification? So do you have an estimated number of months or years? I don't know.
So actually our project called Project Mumbling, I can talk about that more afterwards. Our project started even before the MDR was published, but the shape of the project changed over time. Obviously, in the beginning, it was more of an RA project where we were the regulatory affairs team, some of the members, and also some of the clinical team members were just looking to see what's to come. And so just trying to follow up what would be the impact, more like a curiosity and planning ahead of time. And then until when in May 2017, when the actual text was published, we transformed the project more into an official project that was known in the company, and we tried to move towards more of a multifunctional team, and it became more of a official project that way. So if I have to say when we started it, I believe in 2016 it already started, and yes, it was not something that we did overnight. We were looking into this even before the text was published.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to say that it's just to say that it's not something that will be that can last just few months. It's something that maybe takes years to prepare, to be organized. But I can imagine Straumann is really a big company. So you have, as you mentioned, some products from class 1 to class 3. So there is a lot of things that are there. So is this also something that makes it more complicated because you have to look at different classification, different products, different requirements? So is it making the project more complex for you?
Absolutely. I think it is always being a big company versus a small company. It always has its pros and cons. I always say sometimes you see smaller companies, it's only a few people, and then everybody's like, yeah, we don't have the resources to do it. But on the other hand, if I need to get something through, I have to maybe talk to 10 people. There may be the same a task that is handled by one person in a small organization is divided between 3 departments in a bigger organization, which means then you have to have the alignment between those different departments and make sure the procedures feed into each other. And one part is theoretically, it feeds into each other. The other part is actually in action, see if it works, and actually the interfaces between the departments needs to be there. So of course, the bigger the company, the bigger the portfolio, it adds to the complexity and that you need to consider. Again, depends what type of products you have. It could be you have, I also have previously worked in a smaller company. We had only one device that we were trying to get into market, but that one device had so many different components, sub-components to it, that each of those would have their own special needs and information that you needed to understand. So I guess it's true. It is definitely dependent on the type of products, not just size of your portfolio, but also the type of devices that you have can definitely impact the complexity.
Yeah, I can imagine that if a company is manufacturing a scanner or an MRI, it's really a big equipment with many components, many things inside. Maybe there is a lot of things to look at, etc. When there is some companies that maybe have just a small device and it's maybe easier to go through. So yeah, bigger company, but also complexity of the device is also an important thing to take into account when you are starting this type of project. And as we've seen, it's not just a one-day project, so you have really to have some planning to that. And in terms of Straumann, so what was the strategy used in terms of the project? So did you have a dedicated team specifically for that project, or did you had one person that was like, you are in charge and now
no
make what you want to do? You need to have the CE certificate, but you are the one responsible. So was there any kind of strategy like that?
No, it's definitely not a one-man show. This is not something that I believe, at least at the company size of a Straumann, this is not something that one person can achieve. Anything that we have achieved was results of the teamwork and a large team that was involved. The setup for us, we had a core team that was basically from different functions of regulatory, product management, clinical quality, and clinical quality, PM, and project leaders and development team. So that was the main team that was active. Not everybody 100% working on this, obviously not. Some people were just contributing. But then also we had a bigger team of experts helping us in terms of procedures, updates, and inputs. So if you have a post-market surveillance discussion, you need to have the experts from the post-market surveillance involved. So depending on which specific topic we were talking talking about. We would have interactions with the subject matter experts. And then in terms of the actual documentation update and having the specific technical files updated, then it's a different team helping us to build together the technical files. Definitely not a one-man show. And again, coming back to our achievement and having the certificate with 0 findings during the audit, I think this is a great thing that we are proud of, but it's definitely a team approach, and a lot of people were involved in this.
And can you, I mean, in terms of the project, do you consider that you had kind of, was it considered like a side project, like a part of many others, or it was really considered by the management as one project that they are really looking at? Maybe you have a meeting every week or every month with them to see the progress. So was it really well, if I can say, monitored by the executives, or it was just, as I say, a side project from any other project?
I think this is MDR is really nothing that you can consider it as a side project. At least for us, that was not the case. Straumann has a commitment to quality. If you look at their top points that they are focusing on, quality is definitely one of those. And I think this having being one of the first company to adopt MDR and implement and be certified is one of the evidences that we do take quality serious, and it is of high importance also for our upper management. So coming back to your question, was it a side project? Absolutely not. As I mentioned, our project has a name, Project Mumbling, which was to show how big it is, and it is not just an easy peasy project. We had a dedicated project. We had communication on continual basis, even up to the CEO level and board of director level. So everybody was aware, and I think that was one of the key factors that we involved the upper management from very early on, and made sure that the different levels of organization, from juniors to high top management, everybody we tried our best to make sure they are aware of the scale of this project and the scale of impact that the MDR would have. At the end of the day, I think it is really important to make everybody understand MDR is not a regulatory affairs issue. It is a concern for access to EU market, and I believe EU market is one of the critical markets for most companies. So when you bring it to that kind of discussion, I think it shows the criticality of the project.
No, it's clear. You talked about the fact that Mumbling was really considered as a big project. I remember when we had discussion the first time, you had a T-shirt with Mumbling, you had some goodies, you had all those things. So you made really a communication tool, like you are maybe selling a product to say, this is a product, here is our product, etc. So you had really a budget for that also.
Honestly, I have been told a few times with people that I should go to commercial team. Definitely, and I think it is important. Again, you need to advertise your project. You need to have a communication channel with your company, and to have that. So for example, we even have a logo for our project. All our presentations are using the same template. We have a slogan. I have the slogan, ensuring access to EU market. It used to be beyond May 2020. Now it's beyond May 2021, of course. Exactly. So really to take that part, I think of course, the MDR at the end of the day is about understanding the regulation, having the communication with notified bodies, and there is a heavy regulatory part to it. But if you really want to be successful in terms of getting the resources and getting the attention that the project deserves, you really need to speak the language of the upper management. You need to speak the language of business. At the end of the day, it's about making sure the business can continue and without any major disruptions, reducing the risk as far as possible, on top of course, being compliant and having a high quality. I mean, there is still a lot of discussions whether MDR really makes your products higher quality or not. Hopefully you don't find very huge gaps, but at the end of the day, a big component in terms of if you look at the implementation strategy, I think the big component of it is communication within your department, within your company as well. And I think we did take the marketing aspect of it definitely very serious.
No, I think it's really great because, as you said, you should also spread the word outside of the regulatory department and make it really a project for everyone, and everyone understand that it's for the benefit for everyone that they are complying to those requirements or helping these projects to be successful. And you showed really a good result with zero non-conformance and with this CE certificate. In terms of the audit, so one question that we have mainly is the fact that we have actually a big struggle to get some notified bodies because there is actually 14 in the NONDO database. Maybe at the date that you were starting, they were 0 or 1 or 2, I don't know.
0.
So when did you start to say to your notified body? Because I think you had already a notified body, so it's not like you will have to find a new one, because I have a lot of people that says to me, oh, we want to make this product on the market, but we have no notified body, so how we do that? And this is really a big problem. But for those that have already a notified body, so when did you contact them and say, we want a date and we have this date to get this audit? So did you contact them at the beginning, or say just when you are sure that everything will be fine? So what was the timeline for you for that?
So we contacted them as soon as we could. We already contacted them basically as soon as the text was published. I think it was shortly after, maybe in June, July, that we had our first meeting. We were lucky that we are with TÜV, and TÜV is one of the open ones that were open from the beginning in terms of discussing, of course, with no commitment, with no definite answers, but at least open to talk, and so that we were able to raise our questions, raise our concern, and have the open communication channel with them, and which I highly appreciated being able to do that. Of course, with the risk that maybe some of the items that we discussed changed over time, because by the time that they could never give us a final answer because they were not allowed to, because they are not designated. And by the time they got designated, probably some of the items have changed or the new guidances came, so some positions changed. So of course, you always have that. You never get a definite answer, even today you don't get a definite answer.
It's also a good point in what you said now, because it's the fact that as you were really early on the process, there were some black areas. Nobody knows really how to do that. Even the notified bodies were learning about that, and maybe they had their, if I can say, interpretation of how to do that, and the guidance is coming and the interpretation completely changed, so your project is maybe changing to some other way. So did you have those times where you say, oh, we put everything in place and we have to change everything because of that?
Yes and yes. I mean, one of the biggest topic, I think, coming back to like communication with notified bodies, we had a lot of questions that mainly remained the same question marks throughout the first 1 or 2 years.
Okay.
So it was only until the time of actual certification that we could get them finally answered. For example, one of the biggest discussions for the dental industry is the discussion of well-established technologies.
Yeah.
Because the dental implants were under discussion whether or not they can be considered well-established technologies as screws are, and this has a huge impact on our industry. And there was a lot of back and forth since the beginning of when the text came out, and it was only recently that we got a position paper from the Team MB that considers some of the dental implants well-established technologies. So obviously, again, having this communication from the early on, pushing for this, trying to get an answer for 2 years, and trying to, like, despite rejections, you try to push again and come up with the reasoning, work with the industry representatives and forums to try to put together rationales and so on. So, for example, that was one of the biggest factors because the conformity assessment route completely is different if your device is a well-established technology or not. And until very last minute, we still had this as an open question. So you are kind of like going through the certification process without really finally know what is the conformity assessment route that you have to go through. And I think these are the kind of unknowns that you have and you have to deal with and just move forward and hope for the best that it happens. But definitely discussing with the notified body as soon as possible, even if you don't get the answer, I highly recommend just to make sure that you have their attention to your device and your type of questions that you have.
No, I think it's a good one because as I've said, I have a lot of people that are saying to me, we are trying to contact them and they are not answering, they are not picking the phone, or when they are answering, they put us on a waiting list. So it's a bit a difficult situation for some of the manufacturers here.
Absolutely.
In terms of the project, so let's pick one.
Sorry, just one comment on that. The other, I mean, one thing is to try to have like a completely separate meeting and this focus on MDR. But what else you could use, and maybe the notified body may be more open to it, to use the time when you have with them. For example, if they come for on-site audit, maybe there is an extra hour that you can book with them to discuss particularly about the MDR topics. Again, most often maybe that person is not your MDR expert or something, but still that is again another channel that you have when the notified body has to be at your side or has to do a surveillance audit. Then maybe you can use that time to say, okay, the 1 hour for lunch break or the 1 hour after the audit, I want to have at least the critical questions asked.
No, I think it's great because as you've said, so use every channel possible to talk to them so that they know you, so that they know your problem, and so that maybe you can get some answers, maybe not all the answers, but some answers, which makes you move a bit forward in terms of the project. Yeah, I wanted to ask you in terms of the project. So, do you pick one element or one thing of the EU MDR, maybe one chapter or one process or one thing that you had to implement with the EU MDR that was really a nightmare for you? So is there something like that was existing on your project?
I think the discussions of the well-established technology was really a tough one because, again, we are dental implant. We are the top dental implant provider in the world. So this is the core of our business, and not having an answer about how this has to move forward. That was definitely one of the stressful ones because you, of course, prepare for the worst. You assume, okay, I don't get the exemption, but in parallel, you hear that your competitors may have gotten such exemptions, and so you don't want to have any differences and any competition disadvantages. So you try to find out what is happening and try to not to get the company in a way that they spend all the money for the worst case, and then it turns out you don't need it. So these kind of discussions was definitely a stressful one. The other part, I think, with the Class 1R reusable devices, which is a new classification, that was also not knowing the expectations of the notified body, and then and also having some surprises throughout the actually going through the process, where the requirements may be local country requirements that they are referring to, and which you may or may not have been aware of, and the impact of that on your on all your portfolio that has to go through this 1R process. I think that was also one of the, again, because it's a new process.
Was there a relief? Was there a relief when you had the second corrigendum that says to you that you have now 4 years additional or 3 years with the date of application? So was there a relief here?
To be honest, not really, because by the time that the corrigendum came, we were way far ahead with our certification process. So it was more like, okay, well, we have it. If now we don't get the certificate before May 26, which we got right on time, if it was May 27, then maybe it would be okay still.
Yeah, so it's the difficulty, I think, when you arrive in this middle of the process, when things can still change, that nothing is really fixed. It can there is some of those surprises that can happen definitely.
Sure.
Is there something that you will have maybe done better now that you are looking at that? You have your certificate, everything is fine. If you had to start back from the beginning, I mean, there is still the unknowns, there is still the things that you didn't know at that time. Is there something that you maybe recommend maybe other companies to say, I would have done that better and maybe in that way because it would have been easier?
Yes, one thing that it got me during the audit, and it was not a big issue. And we did a lot of MDR trainings. We did a lot of internal discussions. Actually, the way we went about MDR, we sat down with every subject matter expert and read the sections of the MDR with them to try to find the gaps and come up with the solutions and so on. So we spent a lot of time working on MDR. The problem was that we did not really record this anywhere as a training because it was not really a training. It was like we are sitting down and we read the MDR together and learn together. And that became an issue because then the notified body was asking for training records of people. And we are like, what do you mean training record? We know it inside out. And then we had some external trainings that we went to and conferences. So there we could provide these kind of trainings. But I think going back, I would have, we could also show like the meeting reports of like the calendar invites that we have on the workshops and so on. But it would have been very nice if we had every time like sign off attendees list and topics that we covered. So then it's very easy to show also to the notified body, yes, these are the training. I think maybe this is not a big topic right now for the companies that go through it now, maybe because now there are a lot of external trainings and a lot of people go to those. But back then in the beginning of the process, we depended a lot on our own internal self-education, if you like, and that became a bit stressful for no reason, something that you have done, but then it's hard to prove that it is done. So
I think it's a good lesson, I think, because auditors are not believing what you are saying. They are just believing papers that they are seeing. So even if you have done it, even if you are really honest, if I can say, they cannot believe you because they have to see the proof, I can say, on paper. Because if they start to believe everything what we are saying, maybe they will have some troubles. But I think it's a good one. The last point I wanted to go through is mainly, you are MDR certified, but we had this extension of 1 year delay. So does it impact you, or do you have some kind of frustration? I say, we should have had 1 year more to place that and to have been less problems. So is there something like that, or you are really relieved and it has no impact at all for you now?
I think for us, of course, frustrating. I cannot not really. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're done with something and you're over, then you can move on. Of course, what is a bit unfortunate, or I don't know the best way to describe it, but basically, if I have known that these products would have more time, I would not. I think it was more when the class 1R got extended. When you get there and you are like, and the deadline get extended, the issue is that, have you known that you have more time for those devices, you would have focused on the more important devices, because that was the stupidest part of that initial deadline, that your class 1s had the highest priority over your class 2 and 3, which have higher risk to the patients. It's a more critical item in your portfolio from the commercial perspective, and to have to prioritize devices that are class 1, it's not the best use of your time and resources in a short amount of time. So I think that is a part that we you could not plan for it. It happened, and I understand for the medical device industry as a whole, that was a necessary decision, made sense. Has it been done previously, earlier? I think that would have helped with the prioritization of the products which we would have focused on. But other than that, at the end of the day, I think it's very important to keep in mind I hear people say MDR is delayed. MDR is not delayed. It's just the initial date of application is delayed. If anything, it's the transition time that is shortened. You have to not forget, we are still, the end date is still the 2024.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, it's just we have less time to comply, because I think what could happen right now, the risk is that we continue putting products under MDD on the market, then you only have 3 years to remediate everything in time. And I think, and then the other side of it is, how much do you trust these timelines, right? Because in the beginning you said we were like quite sure about the timelines. We said it is within the text, anything happen, maybe significant change definition is happening and these kind of things, but the date that is written in the text is not going to change. And that is also make it easier to talk to the upper management and get the priority and prioritize your project. But if the commissioner starts constantly like changing these written dates, then how do you keep the motivation and trust these dates that these are not gonna change? So I think from that part, maybe it's also a bit the negative part of this. But in general, of course, it's an advantage for the medical device industry as a whole, but keep in mind the transition time is shortened. MDR is not delayed.
Yeah, exactly. And there is one thing, as you are in Switzerland, there was the Swixit that was planned on the 26th of May, 2020. So by this date, by now, you should have normally had to have a new authorized representative or importer for Europe, etc. So it's also a positive thing that you had 1 year delay just because you don't have to do all that.
Well, yes and no. Yes, in terms of yes, we have more time for the MDD devices because the discussion there, as you know, for the Switzerland, we need a mutual recognition agreement to be updated to include recognition of the Switzerland under MDR as part of the single market. And because of other framework agreements and political issues, this MRA, mutual recognition agreement for the medical devices, is also on hold. The problem is that the scope of the impact is not limited to only MDR devices, but also MDD devices.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, of course, this extension gives us more time. Maybe the MRA gets signed, which is not very likely, but at least for the MDD products, you are safe. You have more time to implement the EC-REP. However, under MDR, as of today, there is no mutual recognition agreement. That means in order for us to go through the certification, we had to put in place the EC-REP to be able to have our MDR certificate. So at least for the MDR products, I have to start putting the EC-REP on the devices even as of today.
So you are using one of your office in Europe, if I can say, to that, so to do the EC-REP and the importer?
Correct.
Okay. And so yeah, I think here it's really a long journey. So have you celebrated that or not? Because we are still in a coronavirus situation. So I don't know if you have any kind of celebration of this CE certificate.
No, not really. We celebrated like online virtual, but that doesn't really do justice to the amount of work that people have put together to get there. We luckily celebrated very well when we got our audit in December with 0 findings. We had a good celebration afterwards, so I'm really happy that we did that. But as for certificate, we are still waiting for the COVID situation to normalize a little bit or go away so that we can actually celebrate properly. We have a few celebrations due.
Great. So I think it's important also to celebrate those kind of things and to really show recognition to the people that were on this, because it's really a long journey. So congratulations again. So congratulations for all this. I hope you will receive a lot of that. I don't think there is a lot of companies that have an MDR certificate. So you are part of the elite, if I can say. So we can say that Straumann is really committing to quality, as you mentioned, which is really great. Is there any last advice maybe that you want to provide to the audience? So regarding this MDR journey?
I think basically what we mentioned a few times, just to summarize it, I think one of the most important thing is that not to get within the regulatory affairs team, not to think or quality team, not to think that this is your problem. MDR is a company problem. It is a matter of access to EU market, and you need to make it clear to your company. You need stakeholders from commercial side. You need stakeholders from different departments to be involved if you want to have a good, successful project. I highly recommend that. And just a comment on what you just mentioned, the team is the most important thing that you have, and for us that was the same thing. Mumbling team is the most valuable thing that we had on our hand, and celebrating with them every single success is very important. At every step we really tried to make sure that everybody is aware of the milestones achieved, and we definitely tried our best to celebrate together and cheer up the team and recognize them for the activities that they have done and the great achievements that they have done.
It's great. So really thank you for that, because as you mentioned, the team is really the most important thing. I mean, there is also, I think, some good relationships that are built through those projects. Maybe some people that are angry together sometimes because there is things that are not working well. But at the end, when you see the result, you forget all this and you see only the success, so which is great. So Shokoufeh, in terms of people that want to follow up with you, maybe to say congratulations, so where they can find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I guess there is the best way to find me.
So I will put your LinkedIn profile on the show notes. So please go there and just say to her congratulations. And maybe she will show you her Montblanc t-shirt. So
I'll send you a picture.
Celebration. Okay, so thank you for that. So for people that are listening, so thank you for listening to that. So if you have any comment or any questions, so don't hesitate, please, to send that to us through the YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget also to provide some good comments. We have this week, we just closed this week, the Green Belt certification program from EU MDR. So it was really an intense week. I hope the students survived because there was a lot of things that they were going through. But I think we had really an awesome week. So I hope to get the final certificates by today. So please, if you are listening to me, close the certificate by today, or you will not succeed. And I will also try to inform about who made it until the end, and the result they should have more than 80% to get the certificate for that. And by this week, I will also open again the registration for the second session, which will be end of July, but you will know more in the next communication. Okay, so Shokoufeh, thank you for joining. Thank you for all the information that you provided. I think really this is helping a lot of the people and the other companies that will go through that. And I hope there will be more success like that, because we need really that some of those products that are really life savings, which is really important. Okay, so Shokoufeh, thank you, and I wish you a nice day.
Thank you, Munir. That was great talking to you.
Bye-bye.